My name is Michael Martens, KB9VBR. I've been a ham for 25 years, and I'm I don't know if I should say this, but today I joined the Quarter Century Wireless Association. So, so I'm kind of excited. And I'm here today to talk about the 5 steps for what I feel like the 5 steps are for POTA, or Parks on the Air success. So just to kind of get a feeling for the room here, how many people are involved in the Parks on the Air program? Come on, yeah, just about everybody. How many here actively hunt? You know, you're the, okay? And then how many are the ones that go out into the field and are the activators? All right, that looks like about a 60-40 split, 70-30 split. That's good. So hopefully this presentation today will get more of you hunters to decide to go out and be an activator. And the activators, you know, maybe think about, you know, how you're doing things. Maybe, you know, maybe I've got 1 or 2 things that I do that you've never thought about. Maybe you've got something that you do that I've never thought about, which is great because we'll have plenty of time for questions and answer and sharing stuff, because I do not have a real long presentation. I'm not that death by PowerPoint kind of person. So I just want to keep it light, keep it lively, and I just want to really just kind of share, you know, what I like to do is my strategy for Parks on the Air. And I think number 1 is, before you begin, you got to know your goal, your objectives. Your goals are going to have to drive your approach to your activation. And you know, the goals can be simple, they can be a little more complex, they can be targeted. Most of all, they're kind of personal, because POTA, Parks on the Air, is not a contest. The only person you are contesting or running or, you know, fighting against is yourself. That's the only person. So, you know, you're going to want to set goals, you want to achieve those goals, you kind of want to get to the next step. You know, what's your goal? Make 10 contacts, make 100 contacts, operate on, you know, however many bands, you know, use, you know, however many different modes. Try a new antenna, try a new park, add a new park to your list. Maybe try QRP or something like that. So before I head out to the park, that's the first thing I kind of establish. You know, I say, well, you know, I'm going to go to this such and such a park today, and these are my, you know, this is what I really want to do. So I have that sort of a plan in mind, and having an objective in mind, you know, then we can, that helps us sort of move through the 5 steps. So, and that's step number 1. And actually, the 5 steps, I'll just read them off here. I should have made a slide. Location, equipment, setup, logging, and then finally your reporting at the end. So step number 1, location. You know, as they say in the business world, it's all about location, location, location. Park entities, you know, they're going to vary in size and shape. They're going to be as small as a single block. They're going to be large as thousands of acres. And if you're familiar with the POTA the Parks on the Air map and those map pins, you know, sometimes they're in a very defined area. Sometimes they're just helter-skelter in the park, especially if it's a very large park with thousands of acres. The mapping representative may not know the best spot to locate is. And that's fine, because you don't have to go to where that pinpoint is in order to activate. You can activate anywhere, really, within the park boundaries. So get inside the gate, find a nice parking spot. You know, maybe if you're spending the weekend, you know, the campground. Here's a typical location that I kind of like. Parking lot on the edge of a state wildlife area. You know, it's just find that spot where you can set up. Park boundaries, they can be a little bit nebulous sometimes. You may not know exactly where state or federal land ends and private property begins, and that can be a little bit of a problem. Fortunate thing is, there's a lot of times you know, the entities, the state entities, the national, you know, the federal government, they do have maps with decent boundaries on them, so you can kind of see, you can find where those parking areas are, those places to to go in are usually a good sign is, if you see if you see a sign or something else, that means, yeah, I'm on state property. That's probably a good place to go. What I really like to do to find good locations is Google Maps satellite imagery. Because after I've, if I've looked at say like the park maps, what the government puts out, I'll try to mesh those up with a satellite photo so I can, before I drive out there, I've got a really good idea of what the parking area looks like. Is it accessible? Is it a pull-off on the side of the road? Can you actually have more than 2 cars there? Are there trees? Or is it an open field? And that's all stuff that's really kind of, that's if you want a successful activation, that's really kind of important. So, spending 5 minutes with a satellite map to sort of see those spots and get an idea of the lay of the land, even before you go there, will help drive the rest of your activation planning. The second thing I do, the second map I will often pull up, and this is a park, if it's a park that I haven't been to before, is I'll look at the map for my wireless carrier. What's the cell phone coverage at this map? I don't want to be surprised when I get there and find out, I can't spot myself. I know a lot of people like to use the apps on their phones for spotting, or not for spotting, for logging. Some of them, might require a data connection. And if you get there and you find out there's no data, that might be a challenge. So a lot of times I'll pull up my wireless carrier map and I'll see, is it 5G, is it LTE, is it something, passenger pigeon or something like that. And it helps me, sort of understand that, what I should expect for data connections. Now, one thing with the maps, to be sure, is that a lot of times they may not, when they plot those maps, it's just a grade B plot that they do, based on what the antennas and the transmitters at the cell site are doing. It may not take into account foliage, so your cell phone coverage in the summer months might be totally different than your cell phone coverage in the winter months, and just be aware of that. You go there in November and it's beautiful. You get there in June and no park, so nothing at all. So to recap, before I leave for a park, I'm going to know my park hours, admission fees, if I got to pay to get in, if I've got to pass, things like that. Special rules and prohibitions. No wires in the trees. If I'm from Wisconsin, they're a little bit more easygoing. I know states like Minnesota and Michigan, they don't like you to hang lines from a lot of trees, so you try to avoid that. You should really know that. If you're going to visit a national wildlife refuge, know that they become quite strict on what they want you, how they want you to utilize those refuges, because their first mission is for the protection of the species that are inside that refuge. So oftentimes, if you're going to go to a wildlife refuge, you'll want a system that is very small, very a compact footprint. Maybe a ham stick on the roof of the car, an ATS 120 on the back of your vehicle. Is so that you are completely self-contained and not taking up a lot of space. So really, that's be considerate of that. Know that before you're going into those kind of places. Rough locations where I want to activate, like I said, looking at the maps, I'm seeing where the parking areas are. If I can find a boat landing, I like boat landings because there's always nice big parking spaces at boat landings. Cell phone coverage, things like that. So okay, so I picked my park. I kind of know where I want to go. Next up is equipment. So what am I going to do for equipment? If we're out camping, It's my favorite radio, the FT891, battery, the computer, whatever types of things to go there. In planning, your activation, choose equipment that you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be the same thing I use. It doesn't have to be the same thing somebody else uses. Know how to set up and tear down your gear efficiently. If your antenna system requires tuning or adjusting it, if you're using a base-loaded coil like those Wolf River coils, things like that in the field, know how to do that expediently, so you're not, you get there, you set up, and then you spend, spend a half hour getting frustrated because you can't get a good tune on that coil. And really, talking about equipment, there's really no right or wrong radio or antenna to use. There's so many choices available. I know, you walk through the show here today, and how many dozens of antennas, how many scores of radios do we see? It gets challenging and frustrating, and don't fall into the trap that there's just one specific way you have to do things, because there isn't. What might be right for me might be totally different for anybody else in this room, and that's fine. It's you just got to try, work with what you have, what you know, and just kind of go from there. If you have an equipment failure, how are you going to recover in the field? I know a lot of people say that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I kind of subscribe to that practice to a bit, but I'm not going to carry 2 transceivers into the field. I might have a spare battery with me. I'll certainly have 2 power cables with me. I'll certainly have 2 pieces of coax with me and maybe a spare antenna. But there's things where, when you look at your equipment setup, what you're going to carry, there's things that, that make sense to have duplicates, and there's others that, well, can I afford to bring 2 transceivers with me, if you know what I mean. Keep a checklist of all of your gear. That helps me immensely in loadout and making sure I have everything. You're not going to want to miss a critical piece of gear, like a dead battery, like an antenna. I'm setting up and I'm down at Cedar Creek State Park this week. The antenna I was intending to use, for some strange reason, did not get back into my antenna box, so I had to use my spare antenna. But we're still on the air, just not the way I was expecting. In selecting your equipment, think about, these are the things you should think about in your equipment choices. Topography of the park, trees, open spaces. Are you on a hill? Are you deep in a valley? That might make a difference. Your solar or band conditions. We're on the peak of the solar cycle right now. If there's a geomagnetic storm and it's causing a lot of noise on the bands, you might think, that might influence which mode or which band you're going to operate, and then that might also influence maybe which antenna you're going to pick. There was a big geostorm yesterday, or last week Saturday, at that rate. QRP with the magnetic loop antenna would not be my first choice last week. But if the bands are quiet and it looks like those upper bands are really starting to cook, then I love to go that route. Like I said, in your bands most operate. And then finally, QRP or QRO, full power. And when in the POTA world, when we talk about QRO, we're not talking about 1,000 watts unless you really want to carry that amplifier out there with you. 100 watts, barefoot. I like to run 50 watts myself. I find that to be a nice kind of trade-off between output power and battery life. But yeah, that's another choice to make, in your equipment setup. So next up, the physical setup at the location, and this is a this is a more urban spot that I ran into last summer. And looking at that, can you think of if you got to a parking lot like that, how would you kind of approach things? There's trees, but a wire antenna is not going to get up into those trees because you're going to impact other people. This is a trailhead. We were at a state trail. So there's a lot of people walking around. There might be more urban noise. What I ended up doing, I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, there's the nose of my car. I kind of backed into the spot, so I had a protected area where I could just work off the back end of the car. Behind me, there was about a 3-foot piece of flat ground. I was able to kind of squeeze in my vertical quarter wave, that 17-foot whip, and the window screen ground plane there, and just in that cramped little spot there. And we were there for about an hour, got about 40, 50 contacts. It was a nice morning. We had to go off and do a luncheon thing. We were visiting family in Minnesota, so it was a good time. So where are you going to set up? Are there going to be public things to think about? Are there going to be public interactions? Do you want public interactions? I know some people really, they like to set up the tables and the tents and the banners. And that's fine. Be an ambassador to the amateur radio hobby. I love that. Go out and do that. That's great. That's not my style. I tend to be a little bit more nondescript. I'll try to find back corners, with the parking areas, just a little bit out of the way. That's the way I kind of like to do things. So I'm looking at, I'll drive around the parking lot, see, where can we just kind of back the car in and be. It's a little unobtrusive, out of the way. How are you going to set up your station? Do you require trees or other supports? Think about that. Picnic tables, is there a place to sit around, or are you going to have to sit on the ground or the back of the car? All valid setup types of questions. So, first things I check, traffic paths and footprints. We were out last summer at a park. It was the 4th of July weekend. We were at the beach. It was a beautiful day. We got there early, and I had a nice picnic table. As people started to come in to this little Northwoods lake, they started. I don't know what the deal is, but invariably they're going to walk across the coax. They're going to walk, around the antenna and all that. And it's like, can't you see? Don't you see this? Big thing here? No, they don't. So it was amazing how people, I stayed away from the concrete sidewalks, kept out of the way, but evidently that doesn't matter at a lot of places. Picnic tables, places to sit, find, is it shaded? Restrooms, very important. Are there restrooms available? And that's a sign of a great park for me is that. And then finally, you might not think about this, but RF noisemakers. What's the noise floor like out at the location? There's a park by us that I like to go to. Beautiful parking lot, but it's right next to a small hydroelectric dam. So terrible noise. About a quarter mile away, there's a boat landing, and I usually go to that boat landing, which is not as pretty, but still a lot quieter. And then finally, now we're getting to the actual activation. And I'm not going to call it activate, I'm going to call it logging, because that's the primary thing of what we're doing when we're on the air. And then we've got my lovely wife Christine in the background there. She's got her loom. I think she's got her loom somewhere here in the building, if you could spot her. So it's that's what we do when we're on the air. Like I said, I label this logging, but this is the actual activation part of the activity. Logging's that crucial element. It's your activation. You run it the way you want to. Go as fast or as slow as you want. If you want to be conversational, I encourage you to be conversational. People I know a lot of hunters enjoy that. We were talking last night around the campfire, and one guy said, I really haven't gotten into POTA much lately because people just like to go boom, 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 and they don't want to sit down and do a conversation. So it's like, I get that. It's fun. It's fun. I love chatting with people, and if somebody asks me a question over the air, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to talk, and we're going to, and that makes the whole thing a lot more memorable. Don't worry, do you develop your own style. Don't worry about making mistakes over the air. Nobody's really going to going to care. You know, you're in control of that situation. Now, as we talk about logging, you know, there's a lot of different methods. Pen and paper is probably, you know, the most recognizable, most familiar method for a lot of people. That works. There's a lot of computer applications out there. If you're a Windows person, a Mac person, there's hammers. If you like the phone, there's this new YOLO, POTA YOLO log. I heard there's another logging program that's coming out for wireless devices. So, you know, if you're an N3 FJP person, you can get AC Log has got a POTA template now. So there's a lot of options. Pick one that you feel familiar with. I like hammers on the Windows PC. It's comfortable. I can read the little screen fine, so that works for me. The only pieces of information you really need for activation: date, time, call sign, your park number if it's a park-to-park type of thing, you know, to collect that information. You really don't even need you don't really even need to collect the other person's park number, because if you upload the log and leave the park information blank, when the other person uploads their log, POTA will automatically combine the two and give you the park-to-park credit. So the POTA logging upload system is just it's absolute magic sometimes. They've really done a beautiful job at that. Challenging band conditions, you know. How are we going to deal with that? Big fades up and down. You know, don't let that noise, bands close, bands open, don't let that stop you. You know, knowing how the bands, I really did not understand propagation. And I've been a ham for, like I said, I've been a ham for 25 years. I have not really understood propagation until I started going out on a regular basis in a wide variety of solar conditions and got on the air. And then it really started to click and make sense for me. And after doing that a few times, then you look at the numbers. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So that as you kind of grow into that, then you could say it doesn't. The solar report doesn't seem so scary at all. You say, no, I get it. You know, if the A is going to be this and the K is going to be that, I should think about working in this sort of way. I should maybe concentrate on these bands and go forth that way. So as I run my activation, I'm going to, if I've got a cell connection, the first thing I'll do is I'll check the POTA spotting page before I begin, because I'm going to want to see who else is on. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm looking for an open frequency, because I don't want to, you know, listening on the band, and you may not hear, especially on the upper band, you may not hear an activation going on the same frequency, but you know, if I can avoid setting up on a frequency where somebody else is activating, I'm going to try to do that the best I can. Listen first. Listen some more. Listen a little bit more. You know, is this frequency in use? Is this frequency in use? Sometimes somebody will come back. That's cool. I'll move. Avoid common busy frequencies. This is another thing you kind of learn from experience. Nets, the sideband window, the AM windows, those weird interlopers on 20 and 40 meters. You know the frequencies I'm talking about. You know, I was doing an activation. I was switched to 40 meters. I was like at 7190 or something. I was on the bottom part of the general portion of the 40 meter band. I asked, is the frequency in use? Guy comes back and says, well, we're going to have a net in about 20 minutes. You're welcome to join us. And I says, cool. Can I get like 5 or 6 contacts before your net? Sure, yeah, go ahead. So yeah, I ran for 10, 15 minutes, and they were cool about it. I was cool about it. They did their net, and it was a beautiful day. So nets don't have to be the enemy. Just consider that. And then, you know, like I said, operate in the air in a consistent manner. I know for a lot of new activators, the threat of a pileup really kind of scares them. And I think the best way to handle pileups is just to be consistent in your operating style. You know, try to generate a pattern or a rhythm is how you, and then people kind of will fall into that trance, and that will help manage your pile up in a better manner. Finally, we're at the end of the line. We did our activation, and we're ready to tear down, pack up, go home, and submit our logs. But there's a few more things we got to do. Reporting, and reporting is not. It doesn't just mean submitting your log to the Parks on the Air organization, the POTA app page. It's more than that. I like to take pictures. I take a lot of pictures. I shoot video too. You don't have to shoot video, but you can certainly take a few pictures. I'll take pictures of the park. I'll take pictures of the parking area. I'll take pictures of my antenna setup, because that's going to help me. If I decide to go back to this location, how things were set up. Did I like how they were set up? And it just kind of reminds me, maybe I'm going to try something different, and that's what I'll be able to, and then those pictures will remind me, oh yeah, there's trees over there, that might work. Oh, that's a busy spot over there, might not want to be over there. So they're good in the future planning. Keep a logbook. I got a little journal that a lot of times I'll write down information, like location, grid square, the modes, the bands I operated on, the number of contacts, the solar conditions, how I felt the activation went. Because there again, that just kind of helps me in sort of how I want to do things in the future. And then after the action is important, upload your logs in a timely manner. Used to be when Parks on the Air was young, we'd have to email to our logs to the log coordinator, and they would upload them, and it would take days, maybe weeks to get those logs uploaded. Now that you can self-upload, everybody wants that instant gratification. If you can get them uploaded within 24 hours or so, yeah, that's fine. So I know a lot of my logs for this week, they're not going to get, they may not get uploaded until I get home. So that's okay. Finally, check over your equipment. Repair, replace things as needed. Like we said, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. If you want to try to avoid that, make sure you've always got charged batteries, your cables are in good condition. You've got all of your pieces, parts inventoried and ready for the next activations. So, after action. This is my after action report. Take pictures. Check my logs before uploading. There's a nice little software program for the PCs called ADIF Master. It's like a spreadsheet sort of thing. You can look at your log and see, make sure that all of the components are there, that there's no errors or something like that. That'll cause a record to get thrown out. And then finally, just journal my activity for future reference so that I've got a memory of what I've done at that park and move on to the next one. So that ends my formal presentation, and I think, oh man, we got like at least 20 minutes for questions. So that's great. So I'll entertain questions if anybody's got questions. So way in the back. Okay. Okay, yeah, the question is there any major contesting software that works well for POTA, for Parks on the Air? The only big name contesting software that I've really used is N1MM, and it works perfectly fine for POTA. We use it, Dave, one of my partners in crime, we've used that for the Wisconsin QSO party, and oftentimes we'll go to POTA entities to help rack up our multipliers and rack up our points, and we use N1MM for that. It works really well. Really, I think with contesting software, I think all of them are going to work because they're going to have the core pieces of information. They're going to have call sign, date, time, band, and mode, which are all those important elements. Park numbers. Now remember, you don't have to log the park number. You can share the park number with the other person, and maybe you can, as they give you their park number, you could maybe put it in a comment field or something like that, or just forget it. When I'm in the heat of the QSO party, I'll just discard that piece of information, go on to the next person, because when you upload that log, POTA is automatically going to match up park to parks. If a date and time band and mode, if those elements all match up, you'll automatically get that park-to-park credit. Does that make sense? Yeah, all right. Yep, in front. Yes. All right, the Faraday cloth. Yes, let me tell you about that. So initially that is not my idea. So like I said, I was talking about my partner in crime, Dave, KZ9V. So we were, about a year ago, he's a great guy because he's kind of like my muse. He comes up with these harebrained ideas and then we got to figure out how to make them work. He says to me, he goes, well, we were using that Wolf River coil on the back of my pickup truck, and the truck becomes your ground plane, your ground network. What happens if we take the antenna off the truck, but we use something similar as a ground plane? And he thought window screen. So we started playing with that and experimenting with that. I wanted to kind of corroborate what we were finding with maybe research that other people did. I found an article in the May 1977 issue of Ham Radio magazine. Robert Sherwood, the Sherwood engineering reports, he came up with that same idea like 45 years ago. And it's like, because he was living at this cramped little place, and he wanted a vertical antenna, and he was putting hardware cloth in his backyard, and it got the same thing. So I said, okay, so we know it works because I found a verifiable published article, and we just kind of rolled from there, and I've been using it ever since. I love it. So, all right, yeah. Anything else? Yep, over here.
What are your favorite antennas for?
All right. So when I bring my antenna kit usually consists of two different styles of antennas. I'll have a wire antenna with me, like an end-fed half wave, that I could put up with some sort of a support, like a tree. We got lots of trees in Wisconsin. And then my second antenna is going to be a vertical antenna, like a quarter wave vertical, that 17-foot whip, 213-inch whip. And I'll use that as a quarter wave because the whips you can adjust, for the higher bands. Fully extended 17 feet, it's going to be a 20-meter antenna. Just drop it down 11 feet for 15 minutes, 11 feet for 15 meters, 8 feet for 10-meter band. To get on 40 meters, Wolf River makes that little sporty 40 coil you put on there, and then they got a base-loaded vertical antenna. So I think between the two, I don't have a specific favorite brand of end-fed half-wave antennas. They all kind of work the same. But I do have, but that quarter-wave vertical radiator is typically 80% of the time that's what I'm using, especially if I'm just pulling into the park for a couple of hours. So, okay. Yep. POTA on 2 meters, absolutely. I love it. More power to you. It's the great thing about it can be the POTA on 2 meters can be very challenging, and it can be very rewarding. To make Parks on the Air work on the 2-meter band is with VHF communication. It's line of sight. So you've got to be in a vantage point where you can, you're going to be reasonably assured that you can make contacts with other people. So where I live in Wisconsin, in Wausau, Wisconsin, we've got a nice hill called Rib Mountain. It's 1,982 feet. Okay, I know it's not a real legitimate mountain for the rest of you guys out west, but it sits 600-700 feet above the rest of the terrain. I can sit up there, and I've made contacts with my with the 2-meter rig in the back of my car, enough contacts to do an activation. So that's the thing. That's what makes 2 meters successful. Is that if you can get into a vantage point where you can reach out to a population center. If I was in the middle of the national forest and I tried on 2 meters, nobody. The only people that are going to hear me are the bears, and the bears aren't carrying radios. So, but if you can get out into a space where you're reasonably sure, there again, we're talking location, then you've got that ability. So, okay, questions? Yep, in the. It's only simplex. So yeah, repeaters, hotspots, things like that. It's got to be, yeah, it's got to be, wireless RF point-to-point communication. Satellites, transponder. A transponder is not a repeater. So, yep, satellites are legit. Yes?
Have you ever heard recently that POTA was coming up with or had direct entry logging?
Yes. Direct entry of logs. They did offer that capability. I think it came online about a year and a half ago. So you can now, if you've got a POTA account, you can go under your under your account. There's a line item called My Log Uploads, and there's a spot where you can upload your ADI file directly into the database. Okay. They do have yes. Okay, the direct entry, as in if you're paper logging and you want to type those contacts into the system. No?
Just like you would with hammers?
Like on a wireless device?
Yeah.
They.
I don't know if that's the
Okay, that I'm not sure about. Yeah, because they do allow you to direct enter contacts, but it goes into a web form, and if you lose your data connection, you might lose everything. But because it don't get submitted at the same time. But yeah, I don't have any information on it. I don't know if they're going to come up with some kind of logging component or not. So, yeah.
Your experience just with a basic parking lot kind of activation, how much time do you kind of find it takes between the time you kind of pull in the parking lot and the time you're continuing?
All right, so time from setup to finish. Great question. So it depends on my antenna. Like I said, about 80% of the time I'm going to be using that quarter wave radiator, and I can get that antenna up in 5 minutes or less. Usually about 4 or 5 minutes. So and if I'm not going to shoot any video or anything like that, we'll say I'm going to roll into a park and get a quick activation in. Pull in, sort of scope out a spot, 5 minutes for setup, however much time I want to spend on the air, and then as I'm done, probably another 5 to 10 minutes just to kind of get everything packed up and go. That's granted, that's what happens when you've used your equipment enough that you get that feeling that you can, set up that whip in a quick amount of time. A lot of times, I don't even. I'll pull up the analyzer to check to make sure everything looks good. But a lot of times, I've gotten to the point where I can sort of eyeball my whip. It's about 11 feet, and I'm on the 15-meter band. So, or I know on 20 meters I need to bring it in like a half a section to get a good match on the phone portion of the band. All right. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you had any negative encounters with park rangers or park personnel that asked you to not activate or to leave the park or anything?
Negative reactions. I have not had any negative reactions, and I know that some people have, and I acknowledge that. I think maybe part of the reason that I don't is I try to keep things sort of out of the way and unobtrusive, so I'm not taking up a lot of real estate. If I'm at a park and I'm hanging a wire antenna, I'm probably camping for the weekend, so I'm within the confines of my campsite. If I'm doing a day thing, then unless I'm in a wildlife area where there's nobody around, then I'm using that vertical antenna. I've had run-ins with park rangers, but it's always been very positive. And what I do, I know some people try to, and this might be contrary to how some people kind of act, kind of go about things, but I'm not the kind of person to say if a ranger comes to me and asks, what are they doing? What are you doing? I'm not gonna launch into this big explanation of what Parks on the Air is, but instead I'll say, I'm doing ham radio. I'm talking to people all over the world. And I'll give some examples. I've just talked to California. I've talked to New York. I got Spain. And then they say, wow, that's with that? And I say, yeah, with that. Oh, that's really cool. And they kind of go from there. So, all right. Yeah. Yeah, brochures. I know there's that's a good way to kind of handle things too, is to have some sort of literature or piece like or a piece that kind of validates what you're doing. And the Parks on the Air site does have some templates that you can use to kind of to print out some sort of brochures or literature like that. No, I saw a question over here. Yeah.
This is more, I guess, an observation than a question, but I've noticed this with contesters and DXers, as well as some POTA operators. Certain operators seem to think their call sign is QRZ. It is really irritating to have to wait for 15, 20 minutes before they give their call sign.
Yeah, I get that. And that is, yeah, I know what you mean, and that can be frustrating. Listening, because I hunt, and I'm not always activating. I'm hunting too, and you're listening to somebody, and it's like, are you ever going to QRZ? No, it just people just are. He just keeps rolling on and rolling on and rolling on. Yeah, I don't. I guess that's part of the thing where you just sort of listen and kind of figure out how they're. Yeah, you can do that too.
And I'm not going to look it up on the POTA website either. Because,
Yeah.
That's basically using the internet for communicating.
Yep, I get it. So, yeah.
Any tips for roves?
Roves, yeah. I think the best tip I can give you, because when Dave and I do like the Wisconsin and the Minnesota QSO party, we like to we'll jump from park to park and to kind of rack up our points and our multipliers. But then we also have to set up and tear down expediently. And I think that's the key tip, is to be able to roll into a park, be able to get on the air quickly, and then do however many and get out. I think that's the biggest challenge we always have is that setup tear down aspect of it. If you can kind of increase your efficiency in that regard, that's great. The other big hang up I have with roves is how do you stop? You get to 10 and people are still, I know I'm a little bit different than other people, that when I get on the air, Ham Alert just busts open and everybody starts calling me. And I get that. And that makes roves challenging, because by the time you get to 10 contacts, you want to break off and go to the next park, but people want to keep calling you. So yeah. If there's a way to stop, usually I try to get to about 20 or 25, and then I say, yeah, we gotta shut her down and go to the next park, and that's like 20, 30 minutes on the air. So, but yeah, that's a challenge. So yeah.
Do you always try to set up into the general portion of the band?
Yes, I do. Band locations. I usually do. There's been a couple times where I've either inadvertently activated on the extra portion of the bands. But that's not my regular habit. I try to keep it around general, just to maximize things. Even if I'm on 10 meters, I stay below 28.5. In the technician part of the band. So just to give the greatest breadth of contacts ability. I know a lot of people, they don't, they may not want to deal with the pileups, so dropping down to extra is a good way to kind of regulate that a little bit. So if you don't want, if you're an extra class operator and pileups aren't your jam, operating in the extra class portion might be it. So DX too, a lot of DX stations overlap in the extra portion. So if you're looking for DX, yeah.
First, thanks for your talk and your
Yeah.
videos. They
Oh, thank you.
Awesome, yeah. So I've done a lot of activating. I've activated most of the Iowa parks.
Uh-huh.
I found a great way to show on the map all the ones I've activated and ones that I still need to get, so I can kind of be strategic about making a trip to go knock out the ones I need.
Yeah.
Have you got a way to do that?
That is a good question. Now, just a couple weeks ago, maybe this is a suggestion. A couple weeks ago in Wisconsin, we did a thing where we wanted to get people to, as many people as we could, activate on the Ice Age National Scenic Trail. So what I did for that was to get the KMZ file for the trail, and I put it into Google Maps, and then I was able to put pinpoints. One thing to consider: you can download the KML file of the POTA database and pump that into Google Map. So you could create a custom Google Map and maybe put those pins out there for you. That might be, and then you could have the maybe the activated as one color pin and the non-activated another color pin on the map, and be able to kind of see, visualize how you want to grab the last few parks. All right. Spreadsheet would be an option too. Yeah, spreadsheet wouldn't be visual, but that's a great way of tracking it. Way in the back. Uh-huh. Sure. I got it. Yeah, it's talking about, yeah. I used, giving the state while we're activating, I used to do that all the time, give the state and the park number, and then for some reason I kind of dropped it. I think it was just, I was trying to be a little bit more expedient, but I do, yeah, I get what I get it, where where you're talking about, because it is a good thing. I know, see, this week, I'm in Illinois, I'm in Indiana, I'm in Ohio. So people are expecting me to be in Wisconsin. And I said, no, I'm in Illinois today. So yeah, I got to get that back into my head to give the state along with the park number. So, yeah.
I was going to say, I promise you not that I won't give you a hard time for running 50 watts for the benefit of that.
We gotta figure out some way to get air. There's a couple of guys on Arizona that I always hear regularly, but that's a challenge for Wisconsin. That is a challenging state. Arizona and Nevada are two that just I can get Idaho, Washington, Oregon all day long, but yeah, those two, Arizona and Nevada, are just like pulling teeth sometimes. So, any others? So I think we're getting really, yeah, we're just about closing time. So. Last call. Last call. Yeah. All right, thank you.